Beautiful black bodies steadily stalk concrete streets, quietly concealing calypsoic currents amid camouflage identities. But stark naked reality testifies, as subtle as sunlight, cutting across carefully structured frames and boldly molded muscles. The truth cannot be denied, because heredity refuses to hide. Africans born in America bear striking resemblance, peaceful reminiscence of Egyptians, Nubians, Hausa, Fulani. We be Watusi tall, pygmy small, our ancestors constantly.
Because when you look at this here, when you look at the lineup that these brothers put here today, I mean, it's almost like I don't even really have to do a lecture. I mean, the pictures are all speaking for themselves. The thing is that anybody who walked in this door today, they would look at these pictures and assume that this is artwork from Africa. You'd have to assume that this artwork is from the motherland. You can go all over Africa, east, north, west, and south, and you'll find faces like that from Egypt to South Africa, or Zania as we like to call it, West Africa, East Africa, everywhere you go in Africa, you see faces like that. And so anybody who is in their right mind, who walks in this door and see those faces, they'd have to assume that this was in Africa. So the fact that this is not in Africa, but this is in America, and every single one of them predates not only Columbus, but predates Christ in most cases, this is phenomenal. And so a lot of us, we take it for granted. We read the book, Unexpected Faces in America by Van Woutenaar. We read The Ra Expedition by Thor Heyerdahl, The Black Discovery of America by Michael Bradley, and of course the novel work, The Work of Works, they came before Columbus by the man, the vanguard, the brother that brought it to my attention, the man who deserves all the credit for this particular area, the man who is really on the forefront and pursuing the issue when no one else would do it, Ivan Van Sertima in his book, They Came Before Columbus. So this is not a joke. No, this is not a game that we're playing here. We're talking about the history of our people. We're talking about the lies of the people on the planet Earth, the people who've told lies about African people, who said we had nothing to do with the development of civilization. Everywhere I've gone in the world, I've had to deal with people and their attitudes about black people, about our people. They look at us, we're the invisible man. You read the books. Nobody Knows My Name by Baldwin. The Invisible Man. We read all these books, and then you go right outside. You start standing in line the other day. Just standing in the line, next in line, ready to pay for my lunch. The white woman looked right past me and asked the white boy standing right behind me, how many items did he have? I wasn't even there. Here's a cashier, a dumb cashier, looking past, and I've traveled all over the world, going everywhere trying to find the truth for our people, to bring back, to teach the truth to our people, and she can't even give me the respect of giving me the proper due of standing in line. I'm first in line, won't even ring my little vegetables up. Taught her how to grow vegetables. Didn't know rice grow in Europe. There was no watermelon and onions and garlic growing in Europe. Ancient Mama's on the pancake box because she showed the slave master how to cook. Uncle Ben is on the rice box because he cultivated the rice. He brought it from West Africa. Why do you think all these black people are on the boxes? The first schools that we developed, Tuskegee, Voorhees, all the schools back east were agricultural schools, bringing the knowledge from Africa of how to develop and cultivate the crops. The white man was dying at 30. You remember Ponce de Leon? He was looking for the fountain of youth. The Europeans, if they lived to be 35 years old, they were lucky. They were dying at 35. This is why at 17 and 18 and 16, they were out on the seas trying to learn navigation, trying to learn as much as they could, learn as quickly as they could, because they didn't expect to live very long. Syphilis and gonorrhea rampant throughout Europe. All the diseases that devastated Europe constantly. In fact, if it wasn't for the Great Fire in the 1600s, it may not have even been a Europe. In fact, I believe they may have even set that fire on purpose just to save England. This is important that we start to look at our history. I remember years ago, I don't know how many years ago, I saw John Henry Clark say that he had inquired about African history, and no one really seemed to know the answer. And in speaking to an elder, I forget who it was exactly, it may have been Arthur Schomburg, he stated that, I believe it was Arthur Schomburg, that when you look at European history, then you'll find our history. Because without our history, there is no European history. And so it's funny that the first great civilization, the first great high culture to develop in Europe was not in Scandinavia. It wasn't in the Aryan Germany, where the Aryan race was supposed to be the supreme race. The Germans didn't develop the first civilization in Europe. It wasn't in the Norway or all the nations of the north in Europe. It was in the nation that was closest to Africa. Not even on the mainland of Greece, but in the little islands that sprinkled throughout the Mediterranean world, the islands of Crete, Knossos, the Mycenae civilization. These civilizations were the first civilizations to flourish in Europe and to bring a sense of civilization to that particular land. Now, isn't it funny that when you find the first great monumental structures that come into America, the presence in America, that you find it on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, off the coast? Right off the coast, you find the first pyramid in America, dating back to 1200 BC in an area called Levanta. And in association, in conjunction with this particular pyramid, you find these faces. But the scientists, those people who study anthropology and archaeology and all the other ologies that go along with it, they choose to look past the faces. They all recognize, none of them have differed with this. They all recognize that this was a foreign people who had come into this particular land at this particular time. But they just refuse to look at the faces that you see here today. And if you walked in the door without knowing what we're talking about, you would assume that these are African sculptures. They refuse to look at even the possibility that it was Africans that came over to the Gulf Coast of Mexico. It's important. You know, I just want to say a few more things about this. You know, none of us really get anywhere without other people. You know, Ptah said, consult the ignorant and the wise, because the limits of art are never attained. Elbows are useless at the great chamber. You know, all of us must sit according to our rank and according to our seat. It's the respect of our elders, the respect of our ancestors that really gives us the power, the energy, and really the wherewithal to stand up and be somebody in this world. You don't need to walk in somebody else's shoes. You don't have to try to usurp that which somebody else has done. All you need to do is to study and take note and give credit where credit is due, and then stand on your own 2 feet. You don't need to copy people. And this is our problem. We're too busy copying, getting down and getting funky at a time that we need to get up and do some work for our people. Copying everything white folks, cutting our noses, frying our hair, doing everything that we can do to look like somebody else. When a man like George M. James writes a book called Stolen Legacy and even offers up his life, gives his life, is murdered for writing the book. And 99% of all of us in America will never read this book. And there's a man that gave a book up to show how the Greeks took everything out of Africa. Philosophy, architecture, you name it. They just came in, took it out, and then told a lie about it. So I get angry sometimes because we have to go through a lot to really bring information to you. You know, if you know, I see faces in here, people that I've been with for years. I've known for years, Sister Omawali and others. A number of faces I see here today. And if I could tell you the brothers and sisters that we've lost along the way, brothers who have died in this struggle, people's families have been destroyed in this struggle, all kinds of things have happened in the struggle, but yet we continue, I see the faces, they continue to pursue it. They don't give a damn about Superfly and the Mac and these movies that come out in the new generation of movies that they got on the scene now. We are unbending, unyielding, and we continue the course. And so I just hope, and I can't emphasize enough, that the young people here persevere this. And don't get distracted by all the foolishness and all the ignorance that they have out here for you, because there's enough of it out here. It's important that you be standing there, because it's the Sheikh Bubakaris, it's the LeGrand Claves, it's the Ronoko Rashidis, it's the Omawali Fowles, it's the brother Ashraf Kwamesa Kwesi. This brother who is the godfather of my children, I'm the godfather of one of his children. We've been working together for 10 years out here in this particular struggle. We used to give lectures down at the Muhammad Temple, number 27, when it was on Crenshaw Boulevard, at a time when it wasn't even popular to really teach on these things. Sheikh Abubakar had the First World Alliance. He saw it in New York City, and he saw that it was important to bring history to our people. Nobody came out there to support the program. The program fell apart. So over the years, we've witnessed this time and time again. We get a little bit of thing going, and the next thing you know, it's falling apart. We can't afford to have anything fall apart today. We got to keep this thing moving, keep it going. You got to support the African Study Group. Come out whenever they have anybody to speak. You don't have to be brother, whoever it is out here to speak. If they got something to talk about related to our people, we should come out and listen to it and criticize it. You know, at the end of this, you have a chance to ask questions to see if there's any validity to the allegations that I make here tonight. Don't believe a damn thing I tell you. Just come up and look at me and ask me the question, ask me to support what I say. Hold me responsible and accountable for what I say. You know, this is important that we do this. This is how we all grow. And so I won't go any further with this. We turn the projector on and get into the lecture. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about myself as we go along here, because I want to make sure we get through this whole thing. Thank you. This is one of the brothers we lost along the struggle here. In fact, the last time I saw Sister here, Sister Omawali Files, we were at the services for this brother who has worked with us. In fact, he met Brother Kwesi before I did. He was the first brother that Brother Kwesi met when he first came to Los Angeles. In fact, the brother helped the brother get his first job out at UCLA Medical Center. And we should all thank Brother Rashid, if for nothing else, for that, because the job that, yeah, give Brother Rashid a hand. Because I can hear the brother right now. Everybody knows how the brother is. You can hear him right now. Yeah, brother, go home, brother. You know Brother Rashid. He's always been there, and he's always worked with the children, worked the children's space. You always find the brother in Linwood and Compton on Central Avenue and out in East LA. He was always in the trenches where nobody wanted to go. He grew up in the trenches just like I did. We grew up in the same neighborhoods in East LA, around Crenshaw Boulevard. I shined shoes at the age of 9 on Central Avenue. The Muslims used to come down and get their shoes shined, and this is how I began to grow as a young man, began to look into our history. But Brother Rashid, you see him standing in front of the great temple of Hathor on the island of Philae, in front of the temple of Aset, which we call the temple of Isis. And on the facade here, you see in the background the goddess Hathor. Now she is the goddess and queen of the West. The West in ancient Kemet, let me say this, the ancient Egyptians were the first people on earth to unify themselves as a nation. They were also the first people on earth to have a system of land use classification and urban planning. This is important. We just read past this stuff. They said that the mortuary temples would be situated on the west. The burial sites will be situated on the west. On the eastern side of the Nile, we will have our institutions and we will have our living quarters. So today when you go to buy a piece of property, you go and you buy a piece of property in a residential district, which they call the R district. R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, residential. One is multifamily, one is duplex, one is single family. This is land use classification. And when you get ready to build, if you want to build a cemetery or mortuary, you have to use an M zone. So they had an M zone long before the United States knew what an M zone was. This is the first system of land use classification. And so the queen of the West, the queen of the western side of heaven, was the goddess which we call Het Haru or Hathor. And so we know in our hearts that Brother Rashid, who has gone on to the ancestors now, has made his way to the west, to the western side of heaven. And today the brother is looking down upon us and he's giving us encouragement, and he's probably eating a nice dinner and having a good time. And we move on, we can see that this black woman, as Dr. Ben always points out, this goddess Hathor, was the very goddess that the Jews actually worshiped when they left the area called Chaldea of Mesopotamia. Remember, they said that they worshiped golden calves. Well, this was the goddess Hathor, Het Haru, and Moses worshipped her for over 40 years. This is important. You can see here again, merging out of the western cliffs, as you can see the tombs here. This is important because one of the things they said in America, and they try or attempt to differentiate Native American architecture, particularly the pyramids, the pyramidal superstructures from the Kemetic or Egyptian superstructures. They say that the Mesoamericans were temples and that the Egyptians were tombs. We want to clarify this because every temple, every tomb in Egypt was also a temple. As you can see the temple here in association with the tomb here. Again, you can see the goddess Hathor, the cow goddess of the west, coming out of the tomb here. And this particular pyramid is in the Yucatan Peninsula. And they still haven't completely reconstructed it or uncovered it. But in this particular pyramid, they found a priest lying there with their feet to the east and their heads to the west. Now, I was shocked when I began to study the religion of the Nahuatl, of the Aztec, and the Maya, because I found that the western side of the heaven in the Maya, the Azteca, and all the religions of Mesoamerica, the western side is called the place of women. The place of women. It is the exact same meaning that you have in ancient Kemet. And so here you find the priest laying with his feet to the east and his head to the west, laying inside the pyramid. Again, not just a temple, but also a tomb. And so many of us don't know. In my lecture, The Egyptian Temple, Mother of the Church, I show how the architecture of the church, as well as many of the religious concepts, come right out of ancient Kemet. They've stolen this right out of our motherland. And so you can see that the basic Canaan and Gothic architecture is the twin towers. The entrance to the temple always face the west. Wherever possible, they turn it towards the west. Because the judgment scene, the Nekka scene as we call it in Kemet, was always in the west, even in Christianity. This is something they took right out of Egypt. So here you have in Rome, in France, in Greece, where they have come into Africa and learned the concept of land use classification and learn order and structure, decide to pattern their religious philosophy after ours. And then you find the same concepts there in Mesoamerica. These are things that I want you to bear on your mind as we move along here. Again, you can see here the Gothic cathedrals here, this one being the Cathedral of Notre Dame. You can see here clearly where the scales are being used to determine who is righteous and who is not. And you have this hideous beast here to devour those who have not been found right and true. Now, obviously, this comes from the papyruses and the scripts in the temples of ancient Kemet. As you can see clearly, as the deceased come before the scales to have their hearts weighed against Ma'at, or the feather of truth, you have the beast here waiting in anticipation to devour those who are not found right and just. These are concepts that come right out of Kemet and were introduced into the church. Now, we're going to have to come back and do the temple lecture if y'all want to see more of that. But I just want you to see that these concepts are universal. And we have to begin to ask the question, how did they become that way? And you can see here that in the area of Chichen Itza, this particular building they call the church. And the four cardinal points of the church are represented by zoo types here. On four on each side, you have a monkey, a snail, a turtle, and you also have a man. Now remember, in the Bible you had Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. One was a man, one was an ox, one was an eagle, and one was a lion. And then this was taken right from Osiris's four sons. One was a man, one was a hawk, one was a baboon, and the other was a jackal? Yes. So you got the four sons of Osiris that became the four gospel sons of Christ, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then you have again the same concept in association with Shak, as you see here, the rain god centered at the four cardinal points. Now we're going to make all this clear. I'm just kind of like introducing this information here. We're going to get into some real deep stuff as we move along here. So here you can see in ancient Kemet where you have the concept of the four sons here by the canoptic jars, in which they put the internal organs into the canoptic jars. And so you find also the concept of the canoptic jars right in the tombs of Mexico, representing the four cardinal points, just as they did it in ancient Kemet. In fact, burials, if you didn't expect to rise up from the dead, there would be no need to put pottery and eating utensils and so forth in your tomb. So the concept of resurrection and renewal is a very important and basic principle in both of these societies. And this is mainly what we're going to be doing here, is comparing the Egyptian and Nubian society with that of ancient Mexico. Because this is, in our hypothesis, is where we believe that the brothers and sisters who first made a contact in the Americas came from. And it will become obvious to you as we move along why we've selected this particular region in Africa as being the first one to make the contact. Here you can see the priest king Pakal from the area of called Palenque, also off the Gulf Coast. It's not very far from the Levanta area. In fact, I just returned from there just less than a week, just a little over a week ago. And you can see here the concept of the cross here. Now this is important because Christianity flourished flourished in America the same reason that it flourished throughout most of Africa. Because many of the principles and concepts of Christianity were already here. They had the concept of a resurrection story and the virgin birth story. You had Coatlicue, the mother, the great mother in the Aztec religion, Eggshell, the great mother in the Maya religion, who had given birth. In fact, one of them, Coatlicue, she had taken a hummingbird's feathers and stuck it into her belt. And then she noticed that she had become impregnated by the feathers of a bird. And she bore a holy son. And so this particular son, which is the sun god of the Aztecs, when he came into being, he said to his mother, because he knew his brothers and sisters would be jealous of this particular event, that I will be there to protect you. And so when his brothers and sisters, the moon and the stars, came against the great mother, it was the sun god who came and defended his mother. A concept of immaculate conception, just like that of ancient Kemet, where you find that Isis was impregnated by Osiris, who came in the form of a spirit, in the form of a bird. This is important. We move on. We can see here at the moment of death, Pakal falling into the underworld, into the jaws of the underworld. Now, what is interesting about that is we know that when you go to the ancestors in ancient Kemet, the first one to meet you at the gates of heaven was a jackal. The jackal that we call Anubis. Now, I found this incredible. That in the Nahat religion, the Maya religion, that the first stratum, there are 9 stratums in their underworld. The very first stratum is the stratum of the river. The great river. There's this long mythical river in the underworld. And the dogs help the soul to cross the river. This is exactly the same thing that we have in ancient Kemet, where the jackal Anubis greets the departed at the gates of heaven and sends them along the banks of the Nile River to cross into the western side of heaven. The same exact thing. And not only did they use a dog, but they used a coyote. A coyote who is the exact relative of the jackal. Both of them are scavengers. Both of them are used by nature to clean the earth of deceased animals. They're the ones to keep disease off the face of the earth. So they had the exact zootype. Here in America, as you see the jackal Anubis and the young boy King Tutankhamun's tomb, as the first thing Carnarvon and them found when they entered the tomb, facing was the jackal. Because he is the one that greets you at the gates of heaven. This is a constant theme throughout ancient Kemet. And so you can see Anubis here greeting the departed. The first one you meet is the jackal. Moving on, we can see here, the first one you meet, his heart is being weighed against the feather of truth, is the jackal. So you find in the tombs of Mexico, many of the tombs in Mexico, the dog. Just as you found the jackal, the coyote, to greet the departed at the gates of heaven and to help him cross the first river in the first stratum of the underworld. So how did this get to America? Did they just suddenly come up with this concept by themselves? Brilliant concept, a mythical river, and jackal dogs to help them cross this great mythical river. As I always ask in my other lectures, at what point does possibility become probability? We'll continue on. They tell a story about the area of Tenochtitlan and also Teotihuacan, of how the people had migrated to these particular areas in this great valley, a valley that's surrounded by volcanoes, and in the midst of this is a great lake. And they were told by their ancestors that they would find a lake with an island in the middle of the lake, and on this particular island you would see an eagle devouring a serpent.